technology. We have a timer here, that's good. So the question is, how boards of directors can help drive the digital agenda. But before we can answer this or look into this, we should ask ourselves a question. Are board of directors able to bridge the gap between business and technology? Are they capable and do they have the knowledge about the technology? Are they aware of the cyber threats that we see, cybersecurity issues or ethics in technology? Do they use ChatGPT, or do they think they are digitally advanced because they use email? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. And when you ask boards, you will be surprised about the answer. Most of them think they are able to do it, or they just don't care. So before COVID, I will stand still. 4 years ago, we tried to set up a training session for board members in Malaysia, just to make them more digitally savvy. And we expected a full house, like we see here. But I think we had 7 or 8 registrations. So a couple of things can be the case here. One, they already know everything, or they just don't want to show that they don't know and be at the training session. But there wasn't real interest. And that's weird, because if you ask the next generation, and this is the next generation in Tilburg, for people who am I? This is me, but dressed up as a professor. So when you ask the next generation, they would say that most board members aren't aware of what's happening in the world. Because half of them write their thesis, or have written their thesis, on technology and corporate governance. And what they found out is that most board members aren't aware. They are not digitally savvy. They have no clue what's happening in the world. And they should actually teach them. So maybe what they would say is, boards should listen to the next generation more. And then you get a question, should we have younger people on the board? We can maybe discuss this during the panel, we will see. But for sure that they will have a different answer. And when they did their research, because many of them wrote a thesis on AI and corporate governance, AI in the board, and they said, well, they have no clue. And they should. Because companies, and now I just read, are confronted with an incredible rise in complexity from technology, society, governments, alternate business models, global changes, new risks and opportunities, and shifts in economic conditions. And most of these things are driven by technology. So a lot of things are happening. And I'm not only a university professor, but I'm also a practitioner. I worked 25 years, last month, 25 years at Philips, or Philips Lighting, which then became Signify. And when I started in the 90s, well, there was a world like long product life cycle, steady industry environment. And it was, of course, we innovated, we were Philips, but we only had like 2 competitors, Siemens and GE, and that was basically it. So yes, we won. And then things started to change a bit. We saw that innovation became more important. It was not only evolutionary, it should be more revolutionary. And then in the 2010s, smart products, services, platforms, shorter life cycles, new markets, new competitors. If you look at Philips Lighting, we went from 2 competitors to 500 in just 3 years. Why? We were a lighting company selling light bulbs. Now we are an IoT company. All of a sudden, a completely different ballgame, with different challenges and different opportunities, different risks. And we should be prepared. And we had 2020 changing of the status quo also because of COVID. So many things are happening, and we aren't there yet. Here we are now in 2023, and what we see a lot of technologies, connectivity, sensors, machine learning, neural networks, blockchain, Internet of Things, augmented reality, virtual reality, 3D printing. I could not all put it on the slide. You see ChatGPT here in the middle, and they're all amplifying and accelerating each other, so things go extremely fast. And the question is, how can boards drive technology in this world? Should they only understand the technology, or is there something else, like speed? We will talk about that. Because if you don't do anything as a company, and you just think, well, we don't care, you will end up on this list. And this is a very good list to be on. Kodak was mentioned this morning. We see Kodak, Xerox, Nokia. Well, many of them are tech companies, but they just didn't take the technological changes seriously. And they were just too late. So you don't want to end up on this list. So what should we do? Well, it was mentioned as well, training. We should train the boards. And in 2012 already, an article appeared in the Financial Times that basically said that, well, business schools and training just focus on checking chief executives, monitoring, supervising. And that's wrong. We should do more. Boards should do more than just supervising and monitoring. They actually play an extremely important role when it comes to helping the company forward, giving advice, finding blind spots. But also, they play a more important role in innovation and technology, not only to monitor, but to help drive technological changes, to help management, to discuss with managers what's going on. But then again, what's training doing? And I've been to many training sessions also as a board member, and still we focus too much on the traditional corporate governance issues that were mentioned, by the way, this morning, the principal agent problem. So here we have the agent, the CEO, and we should monitor and make sure that the agent is not doing anything wrong. That's what training is doing. But according to this article in 2012, we should do much more in training sessions. Training should also be about what's happening in the world, making sure that boards can help so the whole company can be trusted, to use that word, trust. So you see changes in board trainings. And when you go to board trainings these days, the ones that actually take technology seriously, they would say, well, boards should ask the right questions. That's what boards do. So this could be the questions that boards ask. How will digital technologies affect our industry and company in the short or longer term? Or are we balancing value creation with adequate risk management, like cybersecurity risks and all kind of other things that we see here, ethics? Or how should we organize for digital innovation? Are we still a hierarchical company that's very close and try to do everything ourselves, or are we more like an open ecosystem and embracing open innovation? And do we have the necessary capabilities in terms of technology, talent, organizational culture? God, these slides were like, everybody's saying the same thing. That's good. Culture, training, trust, technology. So that's what we could train boards to do, asking the right questions. Or what we also see is that we say, well, boards can use technology to become better board members, or more effective board members. So here you see an AI on the board, or AI helping the board. Some companies go so far to appoint an AI on the board, more like a marketing tool or PR statement. But it's something that we can do. Use AI and technology to enhance decision making at boards. And some of my students wrote theses about that as well. So how can we use AI to become better? Well, that's what you see these days. Question, is this enough? The answer is no. We need more, much more. It's not going to help at all. And we have certain examples of companies that kind of figured it out. So I'll give you a couple of examples. One, John Deere. So John Deere, traditional old company, manufacturing agricultural machinery, tractors and all kind of other stuff. And they were a product-oriented company, but they saw that if we look into the future, we have to ask some other questions. What if farmers need different tools? What if we could help farmers become more effective and efficient? So what they did, they say, well, we are going to transform from a machinery company to a digital software company. And that's what they did. But the first thing they did actually was appointing someone else on the board. That was the first step. So not just doing this, no, this is the board. And they appointed Sheila Tolton here as a data analyst, AI specialist. So at least the board understood where the company was going, so they could help. And the company went through tremendous changes, from a product company to more like a smart product, a smart connected product, a product system, and now a system of systems, more like an ecosystem of connectivity. So just training the boards, let them ask the right questions or give them some technology is not enough. You should also look at your composition and see whether people actually understand what's going on. Now I look at my own company, which is Signify. What they did, same thing. As I mentioned, they went from a product company to a light as a service company to more like an experience company. And what they did, well, they set up a digital committee. They said, well, it's nice to have an audit committee and a remuneration committee and a governance committee, but we need a digital committee and we need it now. Otherwise, we cannot do anything. These are the members of the digital committee. If you want to know their names, please check our website. But the chart I give you, because it's also online. So the chart of the digital committee is here. The digital committee shall advise the supervisory board and prepare the decision making of the supervisory board in relation to the committee's responsibilities. And the responsibilities are reviewing company's digital strategy, supervising the company's policy on digital marketing strategies, reviewing the company's digital objectives and performance, periodically assessing the effectiveness and results of the digital initiatives, and at least once a year reviewing the governance for deciding on digital prioritization and spending within company and reporting its findings and recommendations to the supervisory board. These are responsibilities. And they are okay, but still a lot of supervision there. Still a lot of monitoring. And maybe something else is needed as well. But it's a step. And that's what you see companies doing. So, yes, we have to train them, tell the board of directors to ask the right questions, maybe let them use digital technology, look at the composition, and have a separate committee. And of course, we have to force them to become board experts on digital transformation, so we give them a lot of training. So you see the board members, and you see the training. There's a lot of these trainings on the website these days, so you can find them. And then still, the question is this sufficient? So when we do all this, is the board and is the company then digital proof? Well, asking the question is giving you the answer. The answer is no. It still doesn't work. Now I talk about my own experience. I'm a board member myself, and the reason why they appointed me on the board was exactly this. So they viewed me as a digital savvy board member. I understand this. At Signify, I'm responsible for cybersecurity issues. So yes, I know what's going on. But when you sit on a board and you understand all this, it's extremely difficult for you to do anything. Why? Because research has shown that it takes two to tango. And maybe three is even better. When you sit on the board and you are digitally savvy and you want to ask these questions and the others look at you like, 20 years ago we never asked these questions, so they might not be important. You do that once, you did it twice, and the third time you just don't say anything anymore. So you need help. You need a partner on the board, otherwise you don't change a thing. You might have a committee, it doesn't really work. So that's the first thing. You need more people on the board who understands this, and then, yes, there is a chance to change the culture on the board, and when you change the culture on the board, you can change the culture in the company. It takes two, better three to tango. The other thing is that board of directors, when they have to look into the future to understand what's going on, and we cannot predict, because so many things are happening at the same time. There's no one in this room who can predict where we will be in 5 years. No one. So when boards have to ask and deal with this, the future, what they do is they look back and look at their own experience in order to answer the questions for the future. And this is a real problem in boards. I've been a secretary of a board for 20 years. And I have to write the minutes. When do I write the minutes? Before or after the meeting? You might think after the meeting. Nope. Before the meeting, the minute's already done. Because I know exactly at what point in time some director will make a remark. And the joke. Even the jokes are there. I know exactly what they're going to say. This is how it works. Well, so he's the manager coming in. Well, we might have a problem, right? We are transforming from a product company to a more service company. We have to change. First remark of a director sits back. Let me tell you what we did in the 50s when I was the CEO of this company. So they think that with their experience, and they are experienced, so don't get me wrong, and we need their experience, but it's different now. And they try to then say, well, we have been there, seen it, checked. We will give you the answer. And then you get a war story. I don't put them in the minutes anymore. I have a summary now, one sentence. And that's basically it. So boards look back in order to answer questions for the future. And that's a real problem because, as I mentioned, speed is extremely important. So board of directors might know everything about AI, and they might know everything about blockchain or any technology that's there, but the speed, everything is going so fast that the company has to react much faster than many boards realize or work or can work. So we have to change that. Because otherwise, this is going to happen. The gradually and then suddenly principle. So what you see here is BlackBerry, the stock price of BlackBerry. Well, in the 1990s, it went up, because this is like the 90s, so we had the internet, and then the internet bubble burst, so it went down a bit. Then it didn't really change, and then all of a sudden it went up. Look at this, boom, 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 boom. 2008-9, financial crisis, poof. But then it went up again, but it didn't really go up to the old levels. That's the gradually, it took 21 minutes, and then suddenly, within 5 months, it was done. What's the reason? In 2006-7, Steve Jobs entered the stage like this, and he said, the famous words, today, we are going to reinvent the phone. And what did BlackBerry say? Look at that device. That's a stupid device. It doesn't have a keyboard. Nobody wants to touch the screen with a finger. Apple is stupid. And they thought that this is a toy. Oh yes, some individuals might buy this, but businesses no way, because our BlackBerry is secure, it's safe to use. Businesses are not going to use this. Who has a BlackBerry still? Who wants to be pinged? Because that's what we did when we had BlackBerries. You ping each other. Well, if you are waiting for your ping, you can wait a while because nobody has one anymore. And they thought it was a toy. Then they understood, oh my God, this is serious, it's too late. So here you see that speed is so important, and that board of directors cannot just sit back and relax and wait for what's happening for another Steve Jobs to appear and say, today we're going to reinvent lighting. We're already too late. So we need to have some speed. So how can boards become forward-looking and take center stage in a company? That's the question we should ask. And yes, everything I mentioned is important. The training, the composition, asking the right questions. It's all important. What is more important is having time to ask these questions, to have these discussions, and to be seriously. And that's what we really have to change within boards. This is what we have to change. Agenda setting. The right meetings. Because most meetings of boards are about presenting and informing. So management comes in, presents something to inform the board. And we all sit there and we say yes. Or if it's something financial, we look at the audit committee. Did you look at it? Yes. Fine. Or you look at the other committee, did you? Let's fine. Let's move on because we have this agenda which is so long. And yesterday evening they sent us some other documents that we had to review. This is how board meetings work. So this is all great and has to be done. Then sometimes they present something and we have to make a decision because we have to sign off on something, or there's a strategic decision or an M&A or annual budget. It might take some debate. But then a board meeting is just rushing through. And what we need to have this green spot, to be informed and to have a debate. Now, I told you that I'm on a board, and what we did is we created, it's not new, a very famous no agenda meeting. Like 3 times a year, we just sit there, there's no agenda, just one item that is very important. This is a healthcare company, and I can tell you, within healthcare, there's a lot of innovation. So what we do, we just sit there and debate. only one thing that management think is really relevant, and these are the meetings that I love. The other ones I might fall asleep. Now I cannot draft the meetings in advance, because we are going to ask what-if questions. What if people need different care? What if they stay longer at home? What if hospitals are working differently? And what you get then, you get a completely different discussion, because the guy who sits there in the back and says, well, 50 years ago I worked there, this is what we did, doesn't work. It doesn't work. So you get him out of his comfort zone, and all of a sudden he becomes a real director. So here we have to help the company understand the evolving relationship between technology, nature, and society. That's how you build trust as a board of directors. So board of directors should become at least some meetings forward-looking. Let's call them sci-fi. Not to discuss spaceships and Star Wars, not to make it predictive, because I told you, you cannot predict, but just to reframe their perspective of the world. Because you sit there, you ask the question, what if? Now I mentioned John Deere. And John Deere on their website, they basically put it, we drive efficiency, productivity, and profitability, and it all starts when we ask, what if? And these are the questions that you have to ask at the board level at least a couple of times a year. So I don't say every meeting should be about this, but at least 2 or 3 meetings a year. Just sit there asking what if questions. We did a few, and it's one, inspirational. It opens the eyes of management. You will find blind spots. You will see where you need other competencies. It's perfect. You will see the dangers. You bring in people that understand cybersecurity, and everything becomes much better. Because then, when we have the what-if meetings, we all of a sudden ask ourselves, are we asking the right questions? Do we think, without actually have the false constraints and assumptions that we have about the past and how we used to work? Do we set it aside? And do we imagine the future? Because sometimes imagination is more important than just having an analysis or research. Just sit there and talk. And what really helps, bring in the next generation to these meetings. And I did that last week actually at Signify, where I had my students work on a hackathon. And I just asked them some what-if questions. And they were thinking about solutions. And I had 50 groups working on these solutions. And we picked, with the Signify team, we picked like 3 winners. And we had them come to Signify to discuss their solutions with senior management people. And what we saw there was amazing. It was all of a sudden the younger generation teaching the older generation what's happening. And then the older generation was responding, and that's where you see co-creation at the best possible point. Younger generation, older generation, whew, magic. So you should ask your question now, when you are on a board, or when you are an investor, or when you are a manager, is your board, or is the board of the company you invest in ready for a digital future? And just take these points, because one of the questions that we saw in the previous panel was, how can I distinguish a company that is really good to invest in? Well, these are the things that I look into, and they kind of work, but I'm not going to give you all the magic of this. But just start here, and you will see that most of the companies that take this seriously are the winners of the future. Thank you very much for your attention.